Thank you for joining us on The Key Points. I'm Jifa Bambo. So before I start the program, though, there's something I do want to put out. This morning, I set off for work at 4:30 a.m. And I'm coming from the Pokwase interchange bound towards Achimota. And the disappointment is that half the lights there are dead. And this is a danger not just to motorists, it's a danger to cars that would be stationary. It's a danger to people who just can't see very well. So I want to call on the authorities, because this is a road that is not even a year old and half the lights are dead. Once you cross from Ofanko, most of the lights are gone anyway. It makes that stretch of road really, really dangerous. Many people are driving on high speed. So if the Ministry of Roads or the Urban Roads, the electricity company are watching and listening, please, let's do something. There's just too many dark roads which lead to all these accidents. I'm sure we don't want many people to die before we start fixing street lights. So that said, let's get down to brass tacks, because this morning we are tackling two very controversial issues that emerged during the week, one of which is the neutrality allowance. What animal is that exactly? That's the question some lawyers and public policy analysts have been asking. Well, following government's failure to pay up a promised 20% allowance termed neutrality allowance, CLOGSAG members have not been working. Well, that's contrary to a position taken by the Labour Commission that there is no strike. Let's hear the CLOGSAG boss, Mr. Isaac Bampoado, speak about this allowance.
What locus has Imani Ghana got to do? They should go and read the labor law. It's a solution between an employer and an employer. What is his locus? My friend, tell him to go and sleep. He should mind his own business. Thank you.
And that's Isaac Bampoado there. He was responding to criticisms that the allowance being put forward for them, this neutrality allowance, amounted to almost an illegality. Well, he says this is an agreement, an arrangement between an employer and the employee. But the law and the Supreme Court rulings in recent times have emphasized that some categories of public sector workers must be apolitical. So if government proceeds to pay a 20% allowance, is that not a tacit violation of the constitutional order? Is that not a violation of the same, civil servants code of conduct? Is it not about the allowance, or it's about the name of the allowance? Share your thoughts via our WhatsApp line is 055-369-8789. And you can send us your tweets as well to TV3_Ghana, 3FM 92.7, and also at Beho Bampo. And let me introduce our guest this morning. Let's welcome Mr. Charles Bisu, who is the NPP's Secretary for the Western Region. Yep. You're welcome. Good morning.
Thank you. Good morning.
And one of my long-lost friends, the Honorable George Lowe, is a former MP for North Dai. Good to see you, and thank you for making some time for us.
Thank you, Jifa, and good morning.
Thank you.
And good morning to Charles.
Good morning.
Good. I like the way it started already. And still with the neutrality allowance, why is it illegal? Is it, an animal from outer space or elsewhere? Let's hear Mr. Theophilus Jimaga. He is a private legal practitioner, and he shared his thoughts with us on this.
The law, our constitution is clear that any law that contravenes the constitution to that extent of contravention is null and void. So where are they getting that neutrality and loyalty from that they want to impose on us?
Okay.
I found it a bit weird that they contend that the Ministry of Employment, the office of the senior minister had sat down with them and had negotiated this allowance.
Okay.
It beats my mind. If we feel that there is a problem with the single spine salary structure, let us solve that. My investigations reveal that the CLOGSAG particularly is fighting for this allowance because they feel that the others mentioned in Article 94 3B, the armed forces, the police, etc., are being paid this allowance. So since they have also been mentioned in that same article, they need to be paid that allowance. For example, they feel that the fire service, the immigration service, the legal service, the judicial service, the statistical service, etc., are being paid this amount. So they also feel that they need that allowance to be paid. That cannot be the situation.
Okay.
Because according to the single spine salary structure, everybody is paid according to a certain structure. So if it is that structure that has a problem, let us correct it. But we cannot be paying something to say neutrality allowance. Neutral to what?
Thanks very much for joining us here on the Key Points, and we are running till 10 o'clock. So let me start with George Low. Neutrality allowance. What animal is that?
Well, good morning once again, Jifa, and good morning to your cherished viewers. When I heard it, in fact, I had never known that it existed until some news item down the week announcing the CLOSAC intended strike. And then he talked about a neutrality allowance. And then I said, oh my God, where is this one also from? Because, I mean, clearly, I don't think that anybody has any problem with people being paid allowances. It's part of our standard employment nomenclature. It's been there. I mean, various kinds of allowances have been paid to different people. But this one struck me as a bit odd, because I think that in this country we like to be pretending. We like pretending about so many things. Who is neutral in this country? That's the first question you should ask yourself. When you say neutrality allowance, to what end? Can anybody be neutral? Can you be neutral when at the end of the day you walk into a ballot box and vote? Don't you vote for somebody? We can start talking about impartiality. But neutrality is something that doesn't sit with me. So in the first place, I think that there is a problem. And two, our problem-solving skills, again, is problematic. Like I said, why? Government has every right, or the employer has every right, to look at petitions and complaints from workers. And if there is a need to give some compensation, I think that it's in place. But that compensation must sit within the general framework, so that nobody raises issues like we are raising today with neutrality allowance. So for me, I think that the whole issue of this neutrality allowance doesn't arise. There are many other areas where government can look to and decide to compensate workers. Because you see, when you take CLOSAC out, PSWU has also
they've issued a statement.
They issued a statement listing a long list of other organizations that they believe are supposed to also enjoy neutrality allowance, and I find some of them very, very, very interesting. I find my own. Find my own father's former workplace, NAFTI, and they are talking. They said that they would take a neutrality allowance. What are they going to be neutral about? You are set up as a government organization to do government work. Period. And many other organizations are so to do. You are supposed to drive government policy. You are supposed to do this and that. Clearly, everybody knows what their work allows them to do and what not to do. So if you want to pay workers some COLA, as we normally do, maybe because of living allowance, adjustment and things like that, we will be all for it. But the moment you start talking about neutrality, things like neutrality allowance, then ECG and others will possibly go for anti-strike allowance. The military will go for something else. Teachers will go for something else. Then we are creating more chaos in the system. You see, what has occasioned all these things is the fact that we still have not, as a government or as a state, sat down and decided that, look, let's have a proper salary rationalization. Single spine came, we were hopeful. It didn't solve the problem. We need to be serious and focused about this. And we also need to be focused about our economy. Because all these allowances and people are, sometimes you listen to the amount, paltry if you want to ask me, but people go on strike because conditions are hard. So people now have to look to areas where they will be promised some money. I was shocked to hear that after how many months of strike, the university lecturers went back to the classroom with some online agreement to pay them some online teaching allowance, something about 1,000 cedis or so. Then I asked myself, so why did you hold us to ransom for 6 months and others every day we wake up and you tax strike and you tax strike and you tax strike? But the employer, which is government in this case, must sit up and decide. Yes.
Let me hold you there. Let me bring in Charles Bisu. So you are, with the governing administration.
Okay.
What's the rationale behind the neutrality allowance, and has it come to a point where we are rethinking whether we should do this because there could be implications that we may not be able to deal with going forward?
Okay, Jifa, good morning. I think, and good morning to my brother. I think we need to be assertive in the things that we do as a state. First of all, there's a principle of neutrality, anonymity, and permanence for the civil service. This is a principle that all civil servants must adhere to whilst doing their jobs. And since I was a young person at the university, I really loved that principle. And once that principle is actually written there, then the question is, do we really apply them or actually live by those principles? But just as Honorable Law said, there need to be impartiality in what we do. And so, as citizens, we all have a responsibility to the states. I am looking at it from the point where once the principle has been established, each and every institution has something to do. But then our system has gotten to the point where I think sometimes we hold each other to ransom. I wasn't there when that agreement was done. Like he said,
we wouldn't have known about the agreement had government not reneged.
Okay.
We wouldn't have even known.
You see, so is it a case of holding the government to ransom? I do not know. That's what I'm saying, that the team that met, what went into the agreement, I'm not sure. So was there a permanence reward, or if it's permanent, then maybe that has to, because you're guaranteed a permanent position in the civil servant where the government goes and then comes, so you are there. And then we have the neutrality, and then the other one, anonymity. So are they going to reward all of that? I think that based on that principle, you are remunerated at the end of the month or at the end of the year, you get service benefits and all that based on that principle. So that's something that we have to establish. Now, going into that neutrality, I do not know how that's they worked. They came up to that conclusion, but I believe that as a state, we're all going through difficulty, and it's not just Ghana. The world economy is in recession following COVID, and everyone is rebounding. And our political dynamics is such that we all know that at the end, every second term to government, once we start the agitations, we try to, because we have something called political clientelism, where the top echelons want to stay in power, we favor each other and all that. And so whilst the top echelons of the political leaders are doing that, those beneath us also read what is going on, that yes, these people really want to stay in power. So at a certain point, they're not going to be assertive. So let's actually go in with certain demands. And we keep doing that, and it's becoming a recurring thing. I was watching a clip from Open University, United Kingdom, and they're doing a research, and they mentioned Ghana, that you have NDC and NPP. And like I said, the political clientelism thing is there. So we know that we have to stay in power. So certain things have to go to us. And then those civil servants and all that also hold the government to ransom. And it's becoming a recurring thing. So we are not helping ourselves. I am actually buttressing that with the point that recently the government met in Peduasi, following that turbulence that we are in now, where freight costs is tripled and all that. So the government said, well, there's going to be 30% cuts in whatever we're doing. Fuel allocation has been decreased and all that. So we're all tightening our belts and all that. And for such a demand to come at this time, I'm not saying it's not their right. An agreement was made. But that's the subject of the questioning. Mm-hmm. Our laws talk about, what a civil servant's job is, and certain categories of workers who've been specified in, I think, Article 1994. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so if you sign up for that job, you know that you are meant to be apolitical.
I get Honorable Low's question about are we all neutral, but the question is, once you sign up for the job,
Yes.
there is a job description, there is the expectation, you must meet that. Why should a government should not say that they are being held to ransom and so okay, we are paying a neutrality allowance. Then where does it end?
That's what I'm saying. You see, I mean, that principle is there, and we're here now. You might be MPP or NDC or CPP. I do not know, but questioning us. Honorable Law is coming from the NDC side, and then I'm coming from the MPP side. But you're questioning, you're guided by the questions that you ask, so that it's generic. And then we come from our political point of view, and then at the end, we actually drive it towards Ghana. So I believe in that. But then, like he's saying, we are all not neutral. But then that is the reason why we're given guidelines to follow. So if you go contrary to it, then there are sanctions for that. But I'm saying that, looking at the psychology of our state, we all have a responsibility. I'm saying that those who sat together with the team and agreed on the neutrality and allowance, that I do not know what went into that agreement. But I'm saying that when you're actually ruling a country or actually governing, it is sometimes difficult because people come in with certain demands. But then those coming in with those demands must actually look at the political climate and the economic climate as well, where we've gone through COVID and all that. And then the government says we're all cutting government expenditure by 30%, we're doing this. So it's there. And then within that time, you come out and say that we are making this demand. I am looking at it from the point of view where we know that, yes, it's the second term of a ruling government, and that during that time, Ghana has 8 years rule, 4 years, 8 years NDC, and 8 years. So let's put that there and then make sure we get it before the elections. Like the Abaye approach. I'm not for it. That said, I believe that, like I said, we all have a responsibility. There's that principle of neutrality, permanence, and it's there. So are we actually shelving that and actually coming out with different allowances and all that, like Honorable Low said? Then we're going to open the floodgates.
Okay, so
I will commend.
So should I? Can I hold you to your feet to the fire and say that it is because governments continue to run parallel systems in governance to the work the civil servants do, and some of these people who come in as special assistants, special aides, they even bring in spokespersons when there's already a PRO for an institution, and some of these people are earning more, getting other things. This is what is driving. This is what is driving this. Apart from the hardship.
Yes.
Then the view is that we are sitting here, these people come and run a parallel system, they get paid so much and they go away. Yeah. So we must get our pound of flesh.
Exactly. So when you come in and then you come in with somebody who is loyal to you, and that's all. Yeah, I agree. But there has to be a line drawn, because
by who? Drawn for who?
All of us.
Okay.
No, I mean, I'm not singling out anybody. I would have sat here and say, okay, MPP has done it all right, the government has done it all right. No, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that we need to be assertive in the things that we're doing. Because, for example, let me finish answering this question first. Where, you go in and there's already an establishment and you try to create yours, that brings problems. So there's that suspicion among the civil servants and politicians that if that civil servant is going to be there permanently and all that under that principle, and so he doesn't care what I do, but I need to achieve a certain target or the mandate given me, so I'm not going to allow him to sabotage me. So there's that suspicion. On the other hand, we've had instances where the civil service, the attitude to work, because of the permanence thing, it's not productive. We must admit that. That's what I'm saying, that we need to be assertive. For example, I've been to, some years back, I came back from the UK and I went to customs at around 4:55. I went to AFCO, the airport, cargo. I went there in the morning. I sat there till about 11, going to clear some goods. And the customs officer comes back to tell me that he's going for his lunch, so I should wait for him. I waited for 3 hours. When he came back, I was not happy with him. And because of the way I actually aired my view, he told me that he's not going to do it. So I had to come back the next day. The next day, he delayed me to about 4:55 and then actually gave me a document. When I was supposed to go and make payment. When I got there, the lady was reading a newspaper and then sucking oranges, and then she told me that they are closed. So I was angry and I said, I am here to pay money to the government. And if you had been a private person, it would be different. If you had been a politician who's gone there with a loyal person who has target to me, that loyal person would have done it. So we need to be actually address these points, understand, so that as a country we can go forward. So I am saying that based on that principle, the civil servant must do their work. We, the politicians, must do ours too. But there has to be a fine line drawing. Else, we'll be actually going, round and round in the circles. See, like the Open University research that they're doing. Why should Ghana come in? But then, because when my friends outside of the country have always said that our democracy is good, we're better than some countries. But then, for them to actually delve deeper and say that there's political clientelism here where we give contracts to ourselves so that we can stay in power, and then when NDC come, MPP can help them to also get contracts and all that. It's something that is worrying for us as a country. So I think there has to be a fine line. And doing that, you see that there's those beneath the civil servants, the public servants, also learn from what we, the politicians, do and actually start asking for questions.
And this is one of it.
Exactly.
Honorable Low, the civil and public servants, and I know there's this perception about the parallel system. What can we do about that? Because if they don't feel that there's a certain group of people who are earning more than them and appropriating their work, probably they will not be making these demands.
Well, all over the world, the public service, the civil service, is not new. It's nothing new. I don't see a democracy in this. Even where there is no democracy, you still have this train of people who have the aura of permanence and supposed impartiality, or if you want to call it neutrality, around about them, or whose duties are based on those principles. So Ghana is not an island when it comes to these things.
Is it being destroyed?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, coming to. But you see, you are spot on when you talk about the fact that, why? If I have been appointed or I've worked as a PRO for 20 years, and then suddenly you come in and you think that some personal assistant can do it better, and not only that he is coming to assist me, I would have thought that when the special assistants do come, it may be for you to make my work better or to facilitate my work better the way you want it. But rather they come in there and they are driving new cars, they are living large. We get to know that they are being paid possibly 4 times that than what we are earning, and then I also will say that, look, I demand or I deserve better, because the work that they are doing, sometimes 99% of the time, even for the personal assistant or the special assistant to be able to achieve what they are, it is through the same civil servant or public servant. So really, nothing really had changed. And in most places, some of these assistants do nothing. If you did some research, most of them just sit by when their bosses are going out, they jump into their cars, they follow them, blah 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 blah, and it's worrying. So in one vein, you would say that yes, the CLOSAC or its allies have a case that, look, they want a better condition of living. And if this is the way they can get it, so be it. But you see, Charles mentioned something that I tend to agree with in part, but generally, you see, when he's talking about the fact that this is like a blackmail, because you are a government, you want to stay in power, and so they bring these things and then you are forced to accept because you want to. Why should it be so? That is tantamount to bribery in a way.
I may read it as maybe the government not being confident, because you don't have to give in to this kind of blackmail if you are delivering on other things.
That's why I use the word assertive.
You see, Giva, this assertiveness that we are talking about, it can only come when the parameters are level. One, why would somebody go and sit down and debate as a union and say that no, let's go and tell them that we need neutrality allowance? Because one, they claim other people are enjoying it. Two, the standard or the cost of living is not good, so they would need to find ways of enhancing their salary.
Okay, so is it about the payment or it's about the name of the payment?
That's why I'm saying that. For me, if an employer sits with their workers at a negotiation and the employer sees the need that, oh, okay, this extra work that they are doing, maybe they need to be compensated for it. I have no problem. But I have a problem, first of all, with the name, to call it a neutrality allowance. Because really, what are they neutral about? Have we even conducted research to ascertain the neutrality of these organizations? I don't see it happen because, look, all the heads of those organizations are appointed by government, to start with.
Yeah, so, but those are just the heads.
Yeah, but
we're talking about chief directors, we're talking about directors from whatever level, administrators.
Jiva, we are all political players. You are saying the things you are saying and asking the questions you are asking because of the role you are playing on this program. But I'm sure that if they unleashed you as a free agent, you will even say more things that I'm saying. Because we all interface with these people. We all interface with these people. We all know that they are not politically neutral. Clearly. So we cannot be pretending. All I'm saying is that you see, as a public servant, if there is a service like he went to AFGO, if there is a service that you must deliver, we must make sure that those services are delivered the way they must be delivered. Not because I am NDC or MPP. Why? Like I keep saying, everybody has a choice to make on election day. And on election day, nobody is neutral. If you were neutral, then you don't either turn up to vote or that you not take anybody and
maybe
put your
I'm just exercising my
no, but you see, based on certain parameters
or based on the choice I make at the ballot box.
Yes, but I'm saying that no, but even then you have made a choice. So the point I'm making is, you see, for all of us, even those of us who are open, I'll give you an example. There is a recent argument about judges on the courts, in the higher courts, and some think that because they are been appointed by one government or the other, their judgments are in this way or that way. I always hold a view that, look, Judge Lowe, regional vice chairman of the voter rating, if I end up on the Court of Appeal tomorrow, I will remain an NDC person, but my judgment should reflect impartiality according to law. And that is what is expected of everybody. So that's what I'm saying. That this neutrality thing, it doesn't sit well with me at all.
Yeah,
but I am still hammering the point that, you see, rather than government giving this piecemeal, like I told you about the lecturers' own, then they give them some thousands.
Well, we are still waiting to see if they will meet the requirements.
Yes,
they set with
but you see, you will find that some way, somehow,
they won't do it.
Government reneged on this because maybe at the time they were under pressure and they just acceded to that kind of return. But we must not look. Let's have a salary structure that everybody is happy with. Everybody.
So I'll come to you.
Yeah, everybody is happy with. Everybody is proud to work for, and we should stop pretending. Because you see, as I speak to you now, I had a rude shock. You know, I'm not a milk person. I don't normally like milk, but I go to the Easter holidays in my hometown, and my big brother came, so he would want milk with his coffee. I sent for milk and they say it's 6 cedis. And I'm like, wait, milk?
Because you don't drink milk.
Because
so
I don't drink, but I know that the last time I bought milk, which was not too far, maybe around January, December, thereabout, for the house, it was like 3 cedis, 50 pesos. So look at the quantum jump. And then the man is sitting there in his office, his salary has not been adjusted. He will come and make out some of these demands.
Is this the time to begin a rethink of the single spine salary structure? I think when it was put in place, 2008, and it's been, 12 years, maybe we should look at
Question is, has it worked? Question is, has it worked? No, it hasn't. It hasn't achieved its full implementational lifespan. The kind of things that we heard that single spine was about to do or came to do, it didn't work. And if I say, I find salary rationalization in this country very funny. So if you have a PhD, why is it that all PhDs, and I mean serious PhD, I don't mean the Kwanchen ones, I mean those who would have gone through a rigorous academic research for PhD. Why won't all PhDs, people with PhDs, start from a basic salary? If you have a master's, you start from a basic salary. If you have a first degree, you have a standard salary. If you have SS you have. So that now your job descriptions begin to define parameters. You understand? But even those, we should do a proper rationalization. What I found with the single spine was that suddenly the police got it first. And then some people said, no, these people, we are even doing it. Then they bring some things. Then they go for a meeting. Then it's all haphazard. It wasn't structured properly. I think that the implementation, piecemeal by piecemeal, and then people got things they shouldn't get. Others didn't get the things they should get. And now everybody wants out. If you listen to UTAC during their strike, they wanted out because they think they provide specialized services. Other people also want out because they think that the services they provide is not. So it's a whole gamut of confusion within the salary space. Okay. So yes, when Charles is talking about we have to be assertive, the assertiveness should also be that we are taking a holistic look at how we pay people in this country, so that these agitations that come from time to time would be minimized. It really, really doesn't get any government to do or to prioritize properly. Because I don't know how much these neutrality allowances.
We don't know.
But even if it were 1,000 cedis times the number of months from January to April,
and times the number of workers.
It means that some money government should put somewhere or has planned to put somewhere, they would have to go and take it and pay them. Then some road that needs to be done somewhere will not be done. So we must be careful when we are even negotiating these things.
Okay. Charles,
okay. Yeah,
so is it about the name? If government wants to give a 20% rise to its workers, fine. It's an employer. Yeah. It can do that if it has the means to pay.
Okay.
Maybe it's the name that is wrong, or we are pretending to pay people as Honorable Lowe says we should overhaul the entire salary structure.
I wrote that down. Neutrality allowance. For me, I think whilst we're doing this, we are also educating the public. I would want us to actually churn out what the points are beneath it. Maybe the name neutrality might be wrong. He mentioned impartiality. Is it performance-related allowances? I would read what comes beneath neutrality.
Well, it's meant to be neutral. I heard the Deputy Minister for Labour, the Honorable Rekubrube, he said they don't go for any political events. They are not anything that is outside that space. They cannot contest for anything. And if you had tried to, it gone to court and all that. So he justified it. But to the extent that our laws are clear, the code of conduct is clear, it then begs the question what government is trying to do.
So you see, explaining this, I'll take one out of it. I've had instances in the central region where sometime ECG, one of the vehicles, was found at a particular political party's meeting and all that. And I believe that, yes, should we, maybe the name is a bit, that's what is causing the stir. But then, if you're seeing a civil servant at a political party meeting, active participation and all that, where we've had cases that have gone to court and all that, then I believe that because once the civil servant is actually working with a politician and wants to contest that politician one day, obviously that person may undermine that politician. So I'm getting the import of where it's coming from. But my brother mentioned about neutrality, that we're all not neutral. You see, we have floating voters, right? These floating voters are people who criticize all of us, any government. The floating voters, and that we as politicians are always looking for these floating voters so that they vote for us and then it swings things in our favor. I believe that these people remain neutral until they get to the ballot box, and it is based on what the government has done. So there are people in our system who are neutral, even Jehovah's Witness. But sometimes during conversations, they come out and say that, okay, we believe that this person has done well. Because like you're saying, you go there to buy a tin of milk, it was 3 cedis, now it's 6 cedis. The Jehovah's Witness also buys from the same market, doesn't it? But they do not actually participate in active politics. So I want us to establish the fact. You see, talking about having a holistic way of paying people, the workforce in this country, I agree. But then, you see, when your economy is actually driven by related economies, it's going to be difficult. Following COVID, it's now that we are rethinking of how we actually do things for ourselves. because we are net importers of so many things. Like you're saying, milk is now 6 cedis and all that, because it's driven by an external force. And within your economy, if you haven't actually gotten things, solidly on the ground, then it's going to be difficult, because when you actually go and say, okay, the PhD holder, I know there's a bracket for PhD holders and all that, but it depends on the institution that you work in. Okay, when we do that, are we going to be able to sustain it? The free SHS, yes, it's taking a chunk of the country's budget, and you've done it for so many years. You're looking at ways of actually sustaining it, because it's actually, eventually, the education is actually going to make this country great, so that we do things on our, by our own. So it's a long-term thing, I agree. But we need to look at it from that point. That is why this government is coming with industrialization and all that, so that eventually, when we're able to produce our own things, we can also actually determine prices and compete with others. Then within that, you can say, okay, this is the bracket we're doing. I would liken that to South Africa. It's an African country. But then, one political party is rule. But if you go to South Africa, I know that even political parties, the ANC, if you hold a master's and work for the party, you're paid as your colleague outside of politics. So there's actually more like a level for each and everyone, which actually helps all of us. So I think we would get there. But first of all, we need to be assertive. We even commend, the Ghana Small Scale Miners Association, when there was a 2-year ban on Galamsey and all that, they came closely and worked with the government through the roadmap and all that. And I believe that, and I kept saying that most of these associations should learn from the Ghana Small Scale Miners Association, because they came together and they said, okay, there's a 2-year ban. We want to get back to work, so let's work closely. And every committee that the government set up, they were part of it. They sent representatives and they made an input. So when that agreement came out, they were all happy with this. The rest is to do with monitoring and all that. We are human beings. Sometimes we might deviate here and there, but applying that to various associations, I believe that we need to look at it. But then the neutrality thing, that is what is causing the stir.
So if government wants to pay, it should pay, but don't call it a neutrality allowance. The civil servants should do their job prescribed. If you want to engage in partisan politics, then exit and go and engage in partisan politics.
Yes, but then you see the agreement was made. So once you agree, you need to be actually forthcoming, because the next time they come and sit at the table with you, they are not going to trust you
because of breach of trust.
You understand? Then I am saying that, first of all, if I was there, then I'll look at the 3 principles: permanence, neutrality. It is already there. This, I would have called it something else. I
think there will be the need to call it something
yes,
else,
because
if government really wants to pay.
Yes, because
what I know is that there was a meeting last Thursday. It ended inconclusively.
Yeah.
So I guess we'll still have to wait and see what happens.
In fact, one thing, I have an example. You see, I remember a civil servant who wanted to contest, who was then retiring at the age of 60, and then wanted to contest a certain politician. During that time, he undermined the politician. I know what I'm talking about. Undermined the politician to the extent that people who are even related to that politician and wanted employment in that institution were not employed. So you giving me the drop down makes me understand where that is coming from, because one is undermining the other and the other is undermining. That is why I said that there's the suspicion amongst each other. So if this is going to curb the problem, then let's call it something and actually drill it down well. That's my view.
All right, let me read some messages that have come through from Twitter. Papa Ike writes, good morning, Jifa. My first time of hearing neutrality allowance shook every part of my being. How do you determine the neutrality of a person when it comes to politics? I guess that's some of the questions that Honorable Low is asking. Aaron writes, neutrality allowance makes no sense on any grounds by any standard, because no government worker must be involved in any form of partisan politics openly during work sessions, which stands to reason that they must not make their political colors known for easy transmission of work. I think you mean the involvement or interference in their work. Samson writes, what is the tool and how is neutrality measured? They deserve better salaries, but the name needs to be changed. This one from Nana from Ablikuma Central. As for this neutrality allowance agreement, it's a sham. I don't know what thinking went into the politically neutrality allowance. The civil servants are more political than what we are being told. But can you imagine, because of this agreement, they've gone on strike? This one from Akwesi. I think the problem with the allowance with regards to CLOGSAG is the name neutrality. I think the name should have been changed to responsibility allowance. We teachers also deserve allowance because we get no allowance for the hard work we do for the country. Everyone is going to demand an allowance. Exactly. This one from Francis in Saboba. I blame CLOGSAG leaders who coined this neutrality allowance term. They should have called it something else. I'm a teacher and very soon will also soon demand for our own share of allowances. And AC writes, Jifa, the bottom line is that we've bastardized the civil service. In other jurisdictions, you have a civil service which is tried and tested, who perform their duties devoid of which party is in government. In the UK, now the Prime Minister is under investigation, being chaired by a civil servant. In our country, the system has been bastardized, so now they're asking for a neutrality allowance. Never heard of anywhere. Let's start keeping our hands off the civil service. Let's do the right things by allowing systems to work. People must be employed on sound criteria and not jobs for the boys in critical areas. Thank you very much for your messages.